Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. I know I'm a bit late for this review, but given that the Oscars are in a few weeks, I thought it'd be time to discuss Barbie. Let me just say right out of the gate, I did not like this movie. The fact that the patriarchy is the main villain makes me cringe. I have a lot of issues with this movie outside of the main theme, which I'll probably end up talking about later in this video. But what I wanted to focus on was Barbie's really heavy feminism and how Ken's amazing portrayal ultimately works against the movie's message. Now, before I begin, I want to stress I'm not the target audience for this movie. Obviously. But as a man who's supposed to watch this movie understanding how to treat women better, I just come out of this really annoyed. Also, if you personally enjoy this movie, that's great. I don't want to take that away from you. However, in my opinion, this movie is very flawed, not just because of the way it portrays men, but because of the lessons it's teaching to young girls today. With that out of the way, let's jump in. So, the first 27 minutes of the movie are actually really good. The set design is amazing, and you can really immerse yourself in Barbie land. It's also very cool seeing the deep history and lore of the Barbie universe. Things like the different types of Barbies, the different clothing they wear, and some of the products like their houses or their hairbrushes. There are almost no flaws here, and there are actually signs of what could have been an amazing story. You see the way the Barbies live their day-to-day life, how happy and perfect everything seems to be. It's sort of an endless loop of perfection. But for some reason, Barbie starts experiencing thoughts of death. This is a really good setup for an existential journey Barbie could go through, and I was immediately hooked. I'll go over why I don't like Barbie's character arc later, but we can potentially see cracks in the system. The women in power talk about emotions more than how to better help their citizens. There is a never-ending cycle of doing the same thing every single day, which could probably lead to insanity. And the Ken's lives revolve around the Barbie's validation. One of my favorite scenes of the movie is when Ken is trying to hang out with Barbie. He clearly cares for her, and the movie establishes that they're a couple. However, because Barbie doesn't feel the same way, she has girls' night. Barbie is kind of a terrible girlfriend. She's rejecting Ken's feelings even if just to avoid being uncomfortable herself. The movie does address this later, but this is where we really start to have problems. Because while the first act does a good job with explaining how the Barbies view Barbie land, we don't see how the Kens view it. This is really important because a big focus of the movie revolves around the Kens standing up for their rights, even if through sus means. Now, the Kens might be ignored or subtly rejected, but we never see them discriminated against or living a hard life. The movie makes some offhand comments later, but it's passed on as jokes or never touched upon. If I'm to understand why the Kens rise up, we really should see how poorly they were treated. Them being men isn't a good enough explanation for why they take over Barbie land. I think something as simple as showing the Kens living in dirty shacks might have been enough to sell that storyline. I think the script immediately falls off a ledge as soon as Barbie and Ken enter the real world. A big problem I have with this movie is that the real world doesn't feel real enough. There's an emphasis to tell you the difference between Barbie land and reality. Everything is over the top, cheesy, and in your face in Barbie land. The contrast to that would be subtle, serious, and secretive. But the real world is almost as cheesy and in your face as Barbie land. I think this is a huge detriment to the movie's message because you never really believe these are real problems going on in the world. That's partially a problem with the film's over-reliance on exposition.
And I would just like to inform you, I do not have a vagina. And he does not have a penis. We don't have genitals.
You guys are clearly not doing patriarchy very well.
No, no,
We're doing it well. Yeah, we just hide it better now.
You set the feminist movement back 50 years. You destroyed girls' innate sense of worth, and you are killing the planet with your glorification of rampant consumerism. And until you showed up here and declared yourself Barbie, I hadn't thought about you in years, you fascist.
In the first scene in the real world, Barbie starts feeling a sense of danger as she sees a bunch of men looking at her, while Ken automatically feels a sense of power and acceptance. As I mentioned earlier, there's barely indication the Kens were discriminated or weren't accepted in Barbie Land. Like, people still spoke to them. It's not like they were being avoided or profiled. So, that doesn't really make sense. Barbie feeling scared makes a bit more sense as a bunch of guys start sexualizing her. However, I think this scene is still a bit over the top. Look, I'm not gonna claim to understand what women go through when it comes to being catcalled. I've never personally seen a man catcall a woman in real life, but maybe men avoid that when they can see a woman is with another man. But the scene shows literally every man in the vicinity start sexualizing her. I think what would have been more believable is if we had a single guy make a comment and the rest of the men in the area are kind of just there as bystanders, not really helping the situation. You still get the point across without making it seem like every single guy in the world is a pig. The further we get into the movie, the more I get bored with Barbie's character arc. The beginning of the movie emphasizes that Barbie exists to push for women's rights, but we never see how that fallacy affects Barbie or even other women in the movie. Other than a few feminist statements and a bit of catcalling, we never see women suffering in the system. So it's hard for me to be invested in Barbie's character when the focus is on telling me feminist theory right out of a college classroom or a silly Scooby-Doo chase sequence. Unlike Ken, though not explored nearly enough, I can still understand why Ken feels so excited about the patriarchy within the context of this movie. I've made 2 videos already discussing things men are going through today, and both are highlighted in this movie. In my OnlyFans video, I talked about how some men have an over-reliance on women online, much like how Ken over-relies on Barbie's validation. When she doesn't reciprocate his feelings, he starts to wonder what's wrong with him. Society doesn't seem to care about this or other men's issues unless it's to put men down. Will Ferrell even mentions as much when he says the board doesn't care about Ken. So when he sees an avenue that claims to give him a better lifestyle, much like financial gurus and pickup artists claim, he believes it. This is why I and many men from the I am Kenough trend connected with Ken, because he's going through stuff we've gone through. I mean, we can see Ken's excitement when someone does something as simple as ask him for the time. That kind of implies how bad things might have been for the Kens. So when he goes back to Barbie Land and talks to the other Kens, I'm actually excited. I'm glad that the Kens get their moment to shine. When he establishes his new world order, I'm rooting for him. That's a problem. For a good portion of the movie, Ken is the villain. I'm supposed to be invested in Barbie's story and her triumph over evil, but I'm not. I joke around that Thanos is right and should have done the job. While he may be a sympathetic villain, he is still obviously evil. And I still root for the Avengers when I'm watching Infinity War and Endgame. That's not the case with Ken. I want him and the other Kens to stand up for themselves and win the day. But I shouldn't, because the movie shows they symbolize the patriarchy. Establishing the patriarchy actively steps on the rights of women. I mean, if we look at real world examples of what a patriarchy looks like, we see how low women have to subject themselves to. There are women who have been denied access to education. They can't drive a car. They can't even show any skin without getting acid thrown in their faces. I think this kind of lifestyle is something many people in the West often forget. So the fact that I'm more invested in Ken winning rather than Barbie's existential journey is pretty terrible. Now, I do want to mention a few good things the middle act does well before I move on. The scene where Barbie is meditating at the bus stop is a great scene actually. We really get to see Barbie's emotions here, and Margot Robbie's acting shines, something the script didn't give much room for. I also really liked her first scene with the creator of Barbie. It was a nice cameo and a wholesome interaction, and a break from all the nonsense. The twist that America Ferrera's character was the one giving Barbie's negative emotions was quite interesting, as it kind of expands who exactly can enjoy Barbie. While the Mattel board is pretty stupid and adds literally nothing to the movie, I do like the fact that the movie points out how a corporation led by men is using feminism for their financial profit. as many others clearly do. The movie completely goes off the rails here, and any hopes I had for a deep and nuanced story have just been killed. I know Barbie Land is supposed to be super exaggerated, but the third act is somehow so silly it's unbelievable. First off, why do the writers think men are so obsessed with horses? I haven't met a single guy who's been obsessed with horses. Is it because of cowboys? Westerns haven't been that popular since the 70s. Besides, a lot of movies in the early 2000s were about teenage girls and their horses. So I'm not sure why the writers chose horses as, the Ken's mascot. I think a better replacement might have been sports, sci-fi, anime. Heck, even fishing or poker would have done better. I know a ton of guys who love to fish or play poker. But I think a bigger problem is that the movie has too much of an emphasis on showing the problems of a patriarchy, which, let's be real, everyone has been preached to death about that. But it doesn't show the problems of a matriarchy. And I don't even mean a hypothetical one. I'm talking about the one created in this very movie. As we very briefly see in the opening act, the women in positions of power talk a lot about their individual feelings and emotions, but we don't see much in regard to policy making or coming up with logical solutions to problems. Now, obviously, I'm not saying every woman is extremely emotional, and there are clearly men who are very sensitive. But in general, women tend to be more emotional people, while men tend to be more logical. You need both in a healthy society, and going too far in any one direction is going to have its own set of problems. When the Kens take over, we see a lot of the Barbies heavily sexualized. And while I understand the point the movie is making about women being objectified, we never see the Kens sexualized when the Barbies were in control. If you think women don't sexualize men, you're lying to yourself.
Well, yeah, that's what Hulks do. We smash things. Bruce smashes buildings, I smash fourth walls and bad endings. And sometimes Matt Murdock.
That Ken of yours. Nice looking little protein pot. I'd like to see what kind of nude blob he's packing under those jeans.
There's a lot of ways men are sexualized, such as measuring size, using the terms boy toy or daddy. And I was in the theater for Lightyear, and one of the trailers for Thor Love and Thunder came on. When it showed Thor being naked, one of the women in my group yelled out, "Show the whole thing!"
You're kidding me, right? You're kidding me. Don't you see what you were doing right then?
There's a good article by the San Diego Tribune that talks a bit more about men being sexualized in the workforce, which I'll put a link to in the description. A big scene of the movie that I found really cringe was when the Barbies were unleashing their plan to free the other Barbies. The basis is that the Barbies pretend to be interested in something or not know a subject to distract the Kens from what's going on. They essentially use the power of mansplaining against the Kens. Okay, the Godfather part was pretty funny, admittedly, but the movie is essentially claiming that men mansplain to simply assert their dominance and boost their egos. Now, sure, that does happen a lot, and there are guys who will use this behavior when dating. But what the movie doesn't understand is that a lot of men want to date people, not ideas. Most guys I know want to be with a woman who enjoys the things they enjoy. Sure, dating the most attractive woman is a nice concept, but if she has no personality and there's nothing I can talk to her about, I'm not going to want to date her. Also, the scene implies that a woman asking for help is a bad thing. I'm not really sure why that's bad. If you have trouble with something, ask someone. You can ask for help on these things from, really anyone, and if it is a man helping, he won't always be selfishly driven to date you. Maybe he's just a good person. Also, the part where writer Barbie was saying she had unconsciously started caring about Zack Snyder's Justice League is actually really sexist.
I was somehow really invested in the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League.
It's basically claiming that women don't or can't enjoy superheroes or being part of a fandom. For as much as this movie claims being feminist, it's pretty misogynistic to claim women can't enjoy whatever they want to enjoy.
Come on, Barbie, let's go party. Come on, Barbie, let's go party.
So, I've seen a lot of people say how glad they were that the movie showed both men's and women's issues, or the whole point of the Kens is to relate to how women feel in the real world, but I don't see that at all. As I mentioned earlier, the movie barely mentions anything related to men's issues outside of a few passing comments, or talking about how simp culture hurts men. And we don't see the Kens experience enough discrimination to give a real one-to-one comparison to women. I haven't been given much reason to root for the Barbies other than men bad, women good. Outside the first act, there hasn't been much to connect me to Barbie and her cause. The way the Barbies get their ultimate victory over the Kens is actually really bad. I might so far as to call it plain evil. As a reminder, their plan is to ask the Kens out on a date. The Kens accept, and they serenade the ladies at a campfire. It's actually kind of a sweet moment at first, showing the gentler side of the Kens. But then, the Barbies start ignoring the Kens, and they go so far as to go with other Kens right in front of them. This is a toxic form of emotional manipulation. You make someone believe you care about them, then you rip all that trust right out of them. The heartbreak any man would feel from something like this would be devastating. There's been so much discussion about how toxic men play with women's emotions or ignore them for too long. It's me or the PlayStation, right?
No, don't! Why? Why?
Because this is all you do.
It's all I have!
But when the Barbies do the exact same thing, it's seen as okay. This behavior is downright despicable and, in my opinion, the worst scene in the entire movie. Now, the whole thing with the Kens fighting each other is really stupid because men would be equally pissed at the woman for cheating, if not more. But I can quickly forget about that because we get an amazing scene.
Doesn't seem to matter what I do, I'm always number two.
Much like the first act of the movie, the song is silly, over the top, and really just a lot of fun. The set pieces were great, the comedy was funny, and you could tell the actors were having a lot of fun. I quickly wanted to mention I loved Shang-Chi's variant of Ken. I thought he did a great job in the movie. And the music honestly goes hard. The guitar riffs were so good, and you can really hear Ken's struggles and emotions in this song. Ryan Gosling did such an amazing job here, and he completely deserves the Oscar for supporting male actor. What I love about the song is that Ken's stuck in a situation he knows is one way. He wants validation, but he knows that's next to impossible. So instead, he realizes that he doesn't need that validation and that being himself is enough. The Kens hold each other's hands in solidarity, fully understanding the only way to get through struggle and pain is together. See, this is why I get so frustrated with this movie, because it is so close to being something amazing, but it drops the ball. There are points in the movie that suggest the struggles men and women face, both under the patriarchy and toxic feminism. But the writers are so focused on pushing their agenda, they completely fall flat on their feet instead of telling a deep emotional story. This plays out in the end of the movie. Powerless, Ken and Barbie have a heart-to-heart discussion about their feelings. This is actually a really nice scene, and really the only one that delves into why Ken feels the way he's felt throughout the entire movie. And generally, I do think men avoiding simp culture is a good message, as we saw in my previous video. But we return to my annoyance. As the Barbies have reclaimed their realm, the president claims that it's wrong to keep the status quo and that things shouldn't stay the same. But don't they? Sure, the president apologizes to Weird Barbie, but how do we know a simple apology will actually do anything? And the Ken's position in society mostly remains the same. If the movie really wanted to show the analogy between women and the Kens, then it should have shown the Kens and Barbies achieving equality in their society. I think that would have been really impactful. But instead, we're left with a bunch of broken men in the same place we started at the beginning. But even though we have a depressing ending to the story, at least we had an amazing performance by Ryan Gosling. And even though I wanted the Kens to win, at least they had a moment, a hint, but a single memory of what it meant to be free.
I'm just Ken. Anywhere else I'd be a 10. Is it my destiny to live and die a life of blonde fragility? I'm just Ken. Where I see love, she sees a friend. What will it take for her to see the man behind the tent and fight for me? I'm just Ken. And I'm great at doing stuff. Hey, check me out, yeah, I'm just Ken. My name's Ken, and so am I. Put that manly hand in mine. So hey, world, check me out, yeah, I'm just Ken. Baby,
Thanks for watching.
What about Barbie?
What do you mean?
What's her ending? What does she get?
I forgot about her. Yeah, so this movie does not do a good job with Barbie's character arc. She, ironically, has no agency in this movie, and she's the freaking main character. Until she goes to the Kendom, her feelings aren't even hers. They're America Ferrera's. At every point in the story, Barbie is a reactionary character. Negative things happen to her, so she talks to Weird Barbie. Weird Barbie practically forces her to search for the person who plays with her. Once she finds the kid, Barbie's rejected. She's then practically kidnapped by Mattel. When she escapes, they go to Barbie Land for refuge. But when she experiences the Kendom, she's a complete mess until America Ferrera gives her speech to inspire Barbie. Then, the plan to free the Barbies is mostly led by America and Weird Barbie. You see what I mean here? Now, I understand Barbie is going through an existential crisis and trying to figure it all out. But as I explained earlier, we rarely see Barbie actually deal with what it means to be stereotypical Barbie. I mean, if we compare this to Wonder Woman, Diana is making choices throughout the entire movie. When everyone tells her to shut up or that she can't do anything, she steps up to the plate and tells them she can do it. She takes those courageous steps to saving people when everyone else told her no. Diana decides her destiny. No one else does. Unfortunately for Barbie, she's kind of relegated to being a plot device. The ending is Barbie's only real proactive choice, which claims she wants to become human. But for the most part, Barbie's only experienced the negative parts of being human. I mean, we never really see her experience the joys and triumphs of being human, only the sorrow and the pain. There hasn't been much reason for her to go to the real world either, which we've seen to be comically patriarchal. The fact that the main character, the literal title of the movie, fails as a character arc is not good. I shouldn't be rooting for Ken, and my main investment should be to see what happens to Barbie. But the movie hasn't given me much reason to show why I should care about her other than don't be sexist. And I think this movie is indicative of a wider problem in media, because we see more of these types of female characters or feminist agendas without really driving a positive message. If the goal of these movies is to teach men how to be better, they're completely failing at that. Because if anything, men are becoming more sexist because they don't want to see anything that could be construed as hating men or pushing feminism down their throats. And if the goal is to empower young girls, I think the messages portrayed are pretty terrible. Because rather than showing how to fight for your rights using peace and justice, these movies tell them that they should resort to putting men down, use manipulative or toxic behavior to advance yourself, or even in some cases sexualize themselves in order to fight for women's rights. To end this video out, I want to play a clip from Revenge of the Sith. I think it perfectly embodies the mindset a lot of people have today about really anything. And like Anakin, having this tribalistic perspective of what you believe is correct ultimately leads to violence and pain. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.
You thunder against me?
You have done that yourself.
You will not take it from me!
Your anger and your lust for power have already done that. You have allowed this Dark Lord to twist your mind until now you have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
Don't lecture me, Obi-Wan. I see through the lies of the Jedi. I do not fear the dark side as you do. I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Your new empire?
Don't make me kill you.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must.
You will try.